was very important with this movie to create a film that reflected not just the fans' desire to see a true adaptation of the games, but also to make a film that I loved as a gamer, the movie that I would have wanted to see.
There's lots and lots and lots of Easter eggs in this movie.
There are sounds that people recognize. There are costumes. There are set pieces that are spot on. It's like I'm living in the video game, and it's really exciting.
The concept for this movie was to go back to the first two iconic games, the Spencer Mansion and Police Station, and tell a story with the characters from the games. We really adapt them like we would a novel, taking the core elements and putting them on screen. Every frame has details to the game, from the burger that the trucker's eating to the actual truck design. It's all identical.
Watch out!
Resident Evil 1, I definitely played in the dark in my basement and still to this day remember jumping out of my skin when the dogs jumped through the window. So that's like ingrained in my mind from my childhood.
We got on very well with Capcom. They have been so integral to the movie.
What the fuck?
They gave us the actual blueprints of the mansion and the police station, so we built them to the spec of the game. Gave me shivers like walking into the mansion or seeing the police station for the first time. I was like, oh my God, I'm actually here. I'm in the game, you know? The thing about the games that made them so terrifying and visceral was they played with sound in a way that I had never come across before. You would be walking down a corridor and you would just hear this very distinctive, iconic sound of like this, ooh, of the zombies, and you knew something was happening, but you didn't know where. The first game was fixed camera angles, so you wouldn't be with your character. You'd watch the character go down and away and then round the corner, and sometimes you wouldn't know what was around that corner. You wouldn't be following them. And we tried to incorporate that into the movie as well. It was a lot of fun.
The game holds such a 90s aesthetic, and I like that they sort of honored that.
There's a certain charm that it brings to the movie. It definitely adds some humor where we need it, and also allows us to get away with things like no cell phones or internet on your phone, and some easy escapes for people in modern day.
My initial thing went through the 90s was playing these games, and then they've obviously grown and grown and grown. So that's the magic for me with this particular movie, is how we're bringing back that nostalgia and that Palm Pilot. I mean, I remember having little devices like that. The jeans that they put me in, it's almost like, this is how baggy we wore them 30 years ago. Jeez, things were not fitted in the 90s.
There's something about this time that adds to the terror, because we don't have iPhones, we don't have the accessibilities of what we could do in the situation now, today. You're kind of on your own in a small town, and it was just a really nice touch.
There's a lot of fan favorites in this movie. Claire Redfield, Chris Redfield, Leon Kennedy, Albert Wesker, Jill Valentine.
The games have done this really brilliant job of building these characters up over a number of years, and we're trying to put that all together.
I'm playing Leon S. Kennedy, the rookie cop.
We really went back
Fuck this.
to the original second game, where he's quite a nerdy, reluctant hero.
He doesn't think he's got any value at all, but that's what's so great about the Leon story in this movie. He rises.
Claire's relationship with Leon is one of my favorites, because they're such an unlikely pairing. Their worlds collide, and they're forced to go on this journey together.
I just really want to get out of this town.
And throughout the movie, we feel their relationship strengthen and the respect for one another strengthen.
The costumes are really cool. One of the things that I really like about the Leon outfit is this piece of armor, but also these gloves. When I think of Leon, especially in Resident Evil 2, I think about the fingerless gloves. It's just sort of an iconic thing about the character.
Claire Redfield is a runaway from Raccoon City. She grew up in the orphanage, and now she's coming back to tell her brother some very important information. She's a very tough girl. She's like a street fighter. She can pick locks. She can use guns.
really liked that Claire is a rounded character. She has her own journey. She isn't just there to shoot things. You know, she has a trajectory and an arc, and I love how rebellious she is, and she's an absolute badass.
Me and Claire, it's cool to be able to create a rapport between two characters and expand upon that, because, you know, in the game, they have a friendship, they kind of weave in and out of each other's story, but for this, we're really sort of locked in on each other. So developing that relationship and expanding upon what's already there in the games was really cool.
Claire's red jacket is spot on. I was literally just playing Resident Evil 2, and I showed her a picture. I'm like, come on.
Chris Redfield is a small-town hero. He's stayed in Raccoon City and he's part of this police force. And he is very much of a belief that everything Umbrella does is a good thing.
My character relationship with Chris is that he's my brother. Estranged. When they first meet, you can tell that there's definitely some tension there. They perhaps haven't spoken for a long time, but there's an undeniable bond that they share from the trauma of their childhoods.
I remember when I got to my first wardrobe fitting, I was like, we gotta have the green vest. And it is a Vietnam War vest. The only difference is we took the neck out, because the flak jacket neck, for shooting reasons, is very big and bulky and gets in the way. That's our only difference, really, as far as game versus movie goes for me.
Jill Valentine is definitely a loose cannon in the movie. She's small town girl. She has no problems going into action, but she's a little wild and a little crazy. We meet her in the movie as someone who's just a little unpredictable.
Really?
She's got such an amazing relationship with her force, her team. She's very loyal, and you don't mess with her. My character, Jill Valentine, we kind of find her in the diner with all the guys, and I remember thinking, I look so 90s. Like, it was the costume. I was like, this is so great.
Albert Wesker is known in the games to be one of the key villains of the story.
We meet him in the first game as this guy that double-crosses everybody. And what I wanted to do with this movie is really tell his origin story to not make him an evil person. And so we meet him, and he's a good guy, but he's made some bad decisions.
One of the things I first asked Johannes, who were talking about it, was, am I going to be wearing the sunglasses through the movie? And he was like, no, I don't want, because it should feel raw, it should real. So the fact that Albert Wesker would be walking around in sunglasses just doesn't make any sense. But when something's happened to him later on in the movie that means he needs the sunglasses, that kind of sits within this world. So that was always really important, making sure there was a nod to the game, but keeping it in this raw, real world that we see it in.
I know you're up there. Oh, thank God. You gotta get me out of here, man. Who the fuck are you?
I think what would be most satisfying about the films for the fans is how we've really tried to inject all the little details from the games in the form of props, sets, costumes, and make them feel as though this is an adaptation that has really been faithful to its source material.
In the lobby of the police station, Leon's passed out and there's a typewriter beside him. I think most people who don't know the games would be like, why is there a typewriter? But if you know the games, I think you'll really appreciate them.
There's little things like paintings. There are actual images from the game. The map on the Palm Pilot is actually, if you look at the game, is very similar.
There are blue and green and red herbs, and anyone that played the game knows exactly what they're for. It was just so cool to see them, like, sitting on a shelf. They're not talked about directly, but they're there.
The movie has a little post-credits Easter egg that's very much a fan-based thing, where we recreate the opening screen of the first game. We see Wesker alive when we thought he was dead, and we meet Ada Wong and realize she's been the person pulling the strings behind his sort of nefarious dealings. We see him, he's sort of blinded by the light, and she gives him some sunglasses, and he puts the sunglasses on, which is the iconic look of Wesker, and that's how we end the movie, and it's the beginning of Wesker as we know now.
You never told me your name.
Ada. My name is Ada Wong.
I've always been very much into horror, and then these games came out, and I started to see the references that I loved represented in games rather than movies. For the first time, a computer game was cinematic. And then a real changing point for me was Capcom rebooted the second game a few years ago. And it's just incredible. It's the most cinematic thing I'd ever seen in my life. It was like being immersed in a horror movie. And that coincided with us rebooting this franchise, and it really was the touchstone for how we approached this movie.